absolutely lovely to be here. And it's particularly nice to be doing this session with my friend and colleague Dianne, who we've known each other for a very long time, when we were at the University of Greenwich, I think, or possibly before. So it's great. And actually, our paths have worked very similarly. They've almost worked in tandem, really. So I'm just going to go to the slides. Hopefully you can see that now. And what we wanted to talk about this evening was our sort of journey into private practice, bearing in mind that practice does not always mean clinical practice, and some of the tips that we've gained from our experiences and how we might actually be able to pass those on to you. Now, I know that working for yourself is not for everybody. And, you know, if I just tell you a little bit about my journey, I trained as a nurse at Barts in London, and then straight into midwifery, because midwifery was what I always wanted to do. That little photograph there is me 50 years ago. Would you believe it? We've just had our 50th anniversary of starting nurse training. But I went into midwifery, I worked on the community for a while, and then I decided to go into teaching. And once you become engaged in teaching midwifery, you are often given opportunities to develop areas of interest. And I fell into complementary therapies and was able to develop it as a specialism. I was in the right place at the right time. I ran a degree in complementary therapies at the University of Greenwich. And then after a while, I decided to become a freelance lecturer, which was about the scariest thing I had ever done, I have to say. But I'm still here, nearly 21 years later. And so I feel I've done something right. And I think it's important to make sure that your career follows a path that suits you. It suited me. I don't think I would want to go back to being employed, but it is jolly hard work starting your own business, and it's well worth it in the end. I have to say that it truly is well worth it in the end. What is happening at the moment, I think, is that we are seeing a sea change in the way that midwifery care is being provided. And we know we don't have to talk about some of the difficulties that people working in the NHS have. I think that goes without saying. But so many of us want to continue working as midwives. We want actually to return to what midwifery is about. And it's a good opportunity to consider whether you would like to continue working in the way you always have worked, whether you can do something within the wide profession of midwifery in which there are many, many specialisms, or whether you're ready to make that move from being employed to being self-employed. I would say, however, it's really important that you're not running away from something that's currently not quite right for you, but that you are running towards something you want to do. So this requires a very definitive decision, and it's got to be right for you and your family, actually. It can be extremely fantastic to work for yourself. You're your own boss. You may have a better work-life balance. You can certainly return to the nurturing of midwifery. You can pick out, you can choose the bits that you like doing, and maybe develop areas of specialism within antenatal care, postnatal, perhaps birth. I mean, I'm not particularly talking this evening about being an independent midwife offering birth services, but the principles apply across the board. And we're seeing many midwives going into antenatal education, complementary therapies, maybe doing training in tongue-tie division for babies, maybe setting up yoga classes for pregnancy and that sort of thing. And I think it's really important that if you do decide to work for yourself, you've got to do something you really like doing. There are always bits in any job at all that we don't like doing. And the bits that we do like doing, those are what we need to focus on, because going into your own business is not an easy option. It's actually jolly hard work. And I think both Dianne and I would say we've probably worked harder than we've ever worked before, but it's so worth it. It really is. I think the biggest challenge is getting to grips with the business, the theory and the practice of running a business, because it's something that certainly in the UK NHS we are not taught about. Personally, I feel that we should now be including in midwifery education the opportunities for midwives to devolve into different areas of practice, to specialise, to work either in the NHS or for another employer, or to work for themselves. However, if you do work for yourself, it can be a little lonely. And therefore, it really is important to make a network, both of midwifery colleagues, but also of business colleagues. We love talking, don't we? All midwives love talking. I can never shut up groups of midwives who are on my study days. And that's great because we're all of the same mind, really. But I think it's really important when you're in your own business, working for yourself, to foster those networks, to meet like-minded midwives, and also to make some business connections. It doesn't have to be an expensive thing. In our area, we have women's only business networking groups. There's one that's called Ladies Who Latte. And basically, you turn up at a coffee bar, buy a coffee, and chat to everybody and share your networking and what you do, that sort of thing. I think the other thing is that there are an awful lot of conflicts of interest. It's probably one of the biggest subjects that we talk about on the Expectancy business training. Conflicts between remaining in the NHS and working part-time in your own business, conflicts between taking money for the services which hitherto might have been free at the point of access for NHS people were seeking NHS care, and a variety of other things. And that's something that has to be addressed under the NMC code and the legalities of business. What could you offer? You could do all sorts of things. It could be complementary therapies, which of course is my specialism. It could be baby care. When Dianne and I first were midwives, postnatal care was wonderful. If you were on the community, you did twice daily visits for 3 days, weekly visits for another week, daily visits for another week, and then weekly to 28 days. And that's unheard of now. And yet it really fulfilled what parents wanted and what we wanted to provide. So there's a wide spectrum of standard maternity care, but also those specialisms, whether it is caring for particular groups of parents with specific needs, whether it is focusing on antenatal education, or some of the other elements of care, lactation support and things like that. The world's your oyster. And do remember, and I always say, midwifery is not an extension of nursing. It's a profession in its own right with many, many different options within it. I just want to spend a couple of minutes on debunking myths about working privately. You are allowed to do it. The NHS doesn't own you, even though you have completed midwifery education, pre-registration education within the NHS. Your license to practice on qualification enables you to practice midwifery in any way and anywhere you choose to do that. And that means equally you are entitled to work in private practice. You can practice true holistic nurturing midwifery, but you do have to give some time and attention and energy to working on the business. That means things like marketing, your accounts, buying equipment, whatever it might be. And that's really important too. People often think that going into private practice means you've got a better work-life balance. And certainly you can arrange your work commitments around your family life, for example. So if you want to collect your children from school in the afternoon, or you want to go to the Christmas show that the children are putting on, you can do that. But I have to say, you probably work really hard, perhaps harder than you've ever worked before, in order to get your business up and off the ground and well established. And then people worry, can you earn enough? Well, yes, you can, but you have to make a decision whether this is going to be your main way of working, whether it's going to be a top up to your NHS salary, or whether it's simply going to be a bit of a hobby. And any of those is fine, depending on what your personal and family circumstances are. But if you're wanting to earn the equivalent of your midwifery salary, you have to work at it quite hard. And that means pricing your services appropriately. I think we're not very good at working out the money. Obviously, it's really important to be up to date, an expert in your particular clinical area of midwifery, and making sure that you are as good as you possibly can be in order to offer this service to fee paying clients. Just to note that if you want to have the word midwifery or midwife, which is a protected title in law in the UK, if you want that in your business name, you have to get permission from the NMC to use it. They're very unlikely to object, but you do need to get that permission. And you need to address these conflicts of interests. And then you have to get to grips with all the marketing stuff. That's the hard bit, really, I would say. When you are setting up your business, you need to think about the money right from the start. It's something we don't really like thinking about or talking about in NHS midwifery. If you're in a different country, you may be more familiar with a variety of services where people do pay for what they want. But you have to take on board the cost it will be to set up your service, all the things that you need, the equipment, your training if you need extra training, your insurances, your NMC registration, your marketing, your social media, everything. And you have to work out then how much do you need to earn in order to cover your costs and to make money? Because you're not doing this out of the goodness of your heart. Let's face it, people go into business, rather cynically, I'm saying this, they go into business to make money. And we as midwives have never had to do that really. And we want to care for people. But time is money, folks. Time is money. I'm always saying that to students on our business training. So the most important message here is don't undervalue yourself. You are worth it, as they say in the advert. We're worth it. And you have to price your services accordingly. And that might seem quite a lot when you first start. But actually, if you start low and then try to increase them, it's much more difficult. So you have to price your services realistically and not worry that people won't pay them. They will. If it's what they want, they will certainly pay them. And then just a few top tips for starting your journey towards being self-employed. Really important to do it for the right reasons. So I would suggest discussing your thoughts and plans with your family. You need them on side because it's going to be hard work to start it up. So you've got to do it for the right reasons. That also involves saving now for getting your business off the ground. You can usually offset any costs of extra training and all your equipment. You can offset it against the tax that you might have to pay for working in your business. But start putting some money away now if this is an aim of yours to set up in business so that you're not scrabbling around for money when you actually need it. I would say be professional from the start. Don't be amateurish. Don't try and do things that you're no good at or you don't want to. Ask other people to help you if you need that help, because you only have one chance to make a first impression. So get somebody to help you with your website and your logo design and things like that. Preparation is absolutely key. So don't rush. You might be full of enthusiasm, and that's brilliant. We need enthusiasm, we need motivation. But if you rush it, you will make mistakes. And as I said earlier, value yourself. Never, ever, ever, ever undersell yourself. You're paid for your services when you work for the NHS or any other maternity service provider. You are paid for it. You don't do it free of charge, do you? And you have to get used to the idea that you are now charging for your services. So that's my take on things. I know Diane's going to touch on a couple and carry on with this discussion. I am happy to chat with anybody online if you're interested in business training or complementary therapy training. But obviously, if you want to go it alone, that's also absolutely fine. So thank you very much.